let me start with the most basic question, right? I mean, every time I meet a professor, sort of my first question usually is, how did you choose academia, or did academia choose you? How did that happen?
Sure. So originally I went into academia for the research side of things. I did a little bit of a research project in my undergraduate, and I knew that I enjoyed research. Just the luxury of being able to work on whatever problem you find interesting is really one of the unique things about academia. And then when I actually went into academia, and I found I also love teaching, so that was a bonus. I do have some colleagues who left academia because they realized, oh, this teaching thing just didn't work. So I very much enjoy the teaching, the energy of a classroom, getting to meet so many different students. And then later in my career, now I've moved more into an academic leadership role, and I'm enjoying that too. The ability to make a difference in an academic role, improve the careers of my academic colleagues. I really do enjoy the academic leadership as well.
Yeah, so now it's extremely challenging to be good at one thing. And now we have somebody who's interested in research, who's also good at teaching, and now wants to enter the taboo world of administering, right? I mean, that's not something a researcher or a teacher usually wants to do. And so, and if you're getting good at it, you're sort of good at the holy grail of managing. And I would want some more context on how you got there.
Yeah, so my own discipline is operations and supply chain. So I really like thinking about process, thinking about incentives, thinking about how we actually can do things more effectively. And so I enjoy that in an academic context. Fellow academics are enthusiastic. They're always willing to kind of think about things a bit differently. So while making change in an academic environment can take a lot of energy, there's often resistance to change. It's the challenge, there's always lots of new ideas is kind of the flip side of that. So it's figuring out the good ideas, the things that are going to work from the ones that aren't going to work. You can't see it, but sitting over on my table over there, there's a little sculpture thing that has Don Quixote, because I don't know if you know the story of Don Quixote, but he tilted at windmills. And so, I always have my windmills lined up that I kind of like to tilt at occasionally in terms of things that are probably not going to happen. But it's a bit like research in that regard, right? So you set yourself these challenges. Sometimes you can make a difference and sometimes less so.
So, in my conversation with deans and directors, while they will not publicly easily admit this, at some point, usually off the record, they will say that, the toughest students they have are not the students, but the professors themselves. and they'll be like, when the students are easy, I can tell them to come to class, they'll sort of follow the line, but sort of getting the professors to do anything, that's and sort of, unless there is some whiskey involved, more details are usually not easily sort of upfront. But it's very interesting because most of the work that you're doing is one, ensuring that students are learning cutting edge stuff. And on the other hand, managing your administration so that professors are also evolving. So how do you handle that part of the equation for your institution?
So a lot of it is about setting up the right processes, incentives. We've just altered our workload model, and one of the changes in our new workload model is to give a bit more time for engagement, because within a business school context, those industry links, the industry experience, whether it's consulting or maybe just executive education, having time to do that industry engagement is actually critical to making sure that what you're teaching in the classroom is cutting edge, up to date. So now we're explicitly giving people time to do that engagement, and that's one of the recent changes that we've done. In business schools have always done engagement, but I think people are so time poor now that by making it a fourth category of work beyond research teaching service, we'll give our colleagues a little bit more license to actually spend time with engagement.
So, what kind of changes are required culturally to have an institution that where the professors and the administration are also changing at a fast pace?
It's valuing change, it's allowing failure. Now, this is something that we need to get better at, frankly, in terms of our teaching. Our teaching is at a very high standard. And so I would like to see us evaluate our teaching a little more broadly so that we are rewarding people for trying things that are new, because when you try something new, it doesn't always work well. So that's a current challenge for us, is to figure out how to make it easier to innovate in the classroom without being risk averse. Now, having said that, we do have very innovative professors. They tried, I mean, like many places, they tried lots of new things during COVID. You may not have known, but Melbourne was, I believe, the most locked down city in the world. Well, one of them outside. I mean, I guess China might compete, but it really had a tough time. And that wasn't an Australia-wide thing, that was a Melbourne thing. So, that meant that there was a lot of innovation around the online learning, a lot of peer support around trying new things. And so that has improved the culture around sharing innovation in terms of those ideas. Yeah.
So you make this extremely valid point. Like entrepreneurs are taught that failure, you're supposed to take it in your stride. But I'm also assuming it's equally tough to teach professors that failure is a part of your sort of part of growing up. So because I think it's as you said, it's not something that we're fundamentally taught with. You have you went to Stanford, I went to Wharton. By default, we don't think about failure, and it's very tough to then later go on and say, hey, failing is good. And so how do you balance it out where you're sort of telling your professors that, hey, listen, I want you to really innovate on the upcoming on the curriculum. We need to be cutting edge, and also dealing with the needs of the world as such.
So I guess even though professors tend to be high performing, they are somewhat used to failure, because research is a lot about failing, right? I mean, the whole publication process, you send in your thesis publication from your PhD thesis, and it gets rejected from the journal, and then you try a rewrite and it gets rejected from another journal. And so being tolerant to rejection and failure in the sense of research is part of the academic culture. So I think the challenge is broadening that out, so it's not just in your research where you can be experimental and innovative and trying new things. It's also in your teaching, where, as I say, the sort of more traditional teaching has been around, especially at a place with top school where MBAs expect a lot. They expect things to be highly polished, to then weave in that ability is challenging. Yeah.
Excellent answer. I mean, I like that, because my sister did a PhD, and I remember that I think every year she would worry about I've written so many research papers, and everything is held up at the review process, and they get back, and then it takes months. I think that would build a certain level of tolerance, if I might use that word. So coming back to you, you obviously did your PhD in the US, and then you decided to come back. So what were your top reasons that led you to join the Melbourne Business School in your current role?
Sure. So I was actually in the US for about 20 years. So I did my PhD at Stanford, as you said, and then first job was University of Michigan, but it was actually in an engineering school. And then I realized that business was a better fit with both teaching and research. So then I was at Olsen Business School, Washington University, St. Louis. Then I moved back to Auckland. So I grew up in Auckland, and I moved back to Auckland partly because of the job offer and partly because of family reasons. But now my kids are grown, so I became mobile again. And so when the job opportunity came up here at Melbourne Business School, it was a great opportunity, because it's a really strong school, and also there's lots of opportunities for making a difference.
So, in your opinion, or what do you think are some of the biggest changes that are happening in the business space that business schools aren't keeping in sync with?
Well, I don't know about not keeping in sync, but one of the biggest challenges is, of course, around the natural language processing and ChatGPT. How does that change how we teach? How does that change what we teach? How does that change how we assess? We're trying to keep up with that. Here we had a working group looking at our assessment, but it's so hard to predict exactly how that's going to change how business is done. It's, we can try and teach some of that, but nobody really has the answers at this point.
So, you lead us into this interesting segue where there is AI and there's technology. And on one hand, there is this call for, a lot of these roles that people currently have, they won't exist anymore. And then we also have students using ChatGPT for everything from homework to essays to, I think professors are now trying to figure out, putting their question papers into ChatGPT and then seeing if their questions are going to be solved. And so we live in this very interesting world where, it's very tough to figure out how to take a step back and look at the future. And so do you have guidelines for usage of AI? What are your thoughts around AI? And how do you see the institution adopting AI in its future course of studies?
So we definitely have guidelines, but the real challenge is that as a business school, we've got the accreditation sort of side of things, right? We're actually certifying that our students know the stuff. And then we also have this, we need to teach them the cutting edge stuff. We need to teach them jobs that they will actually be doing. And in terms of the assessment side of it, that's where the biggest challenge is, because it's sort of an arms race, right? Yes, we can put our questions into ChatGPT and see how it does, but it's getting better and better every 6 months or so. So eventually, you won't be able to make up the perfect question, and yet you still need to understand those fundamentals. So I think the best analogy is the fact we still teach children how to add at primary school, even though you can put 3 + 4 into a calculator. The understanding the concept of addition is still fundamental. Now, we don't teach them, as much as we used to teach them with pre-calculator, but, like most kids don't know how to take the square root manually or things like that. But, they still need those concepts. They need to understand what a square root is. They need to understand what addition is. And I think that's true for business education too. You need to understand those fundamentals of finance, operations, marketing, even though you could feed it into a natural language processor and a ChatGPT type thing, and it can come up with a great marketing plan. But if you don't understand those fundamentals of what makes a great marketing plan, you're not going to be as effective as an executive.
So this leads me to this space where you are an operations professor, and my vice dean at Wharton was also an operations professor. It was Anjani Jain, and I remember that whenever he used to give us a homework, he used to get extremely excited if the homework was really tough, and that's when I realized that operations professors do not like things easy. The marketing professors might like it a little bit easier. The rest of the guys, strategy guys, even the finance guys can take it easier. But the operations guys, for them, the answers were sort of always crystal clear, and they sort of extremely high rigor. And it was really tough to make my vice dean very happy, even with my sort of submissions. And that brings me to, the feedback we are now receiving from a lot of colleges, that students are thinking that business school is too hard on them. That the homework is too much, and so this would be sort of, and that's I don't think that's right. I mean, in a sense that the expectation of not doing hard work and sort of still coasting through business school is terrible. But being where you are, how do you sort of see this, right? I mean, this current generation of students maybe not willing to work as hard or expecting a little bit more freedom, and you completely getting that without this phenomenal academic rigor, you're not going to make these graduates great in the world. And so how are you sort of looking at that?
So I think it's a little easier for us because of how we are positioned as a top school. It's sort of part of the value proposition is if you choose to come to MBS, we are going to work you hard. It is going to be a high level of rigor. So I think what's changed is it's always been true that students want to know how this stuff is going to be applied, but I think it's even more true. So pain and suffering for the sake of pain and suffering just doesn't cut it, right? If it's pain and suffering towards a goal, then the students will achieve. And many of our students are quite competitive, so they're keen on achieving. But I think one of the challenges there is a big piece of what we're learning is teaching them unstructured thinking, teaching them how to solve complex problems, and that's the fact that they're learning that way of thinking is harder to make that argument that it's not just here's this simple tool that we know how to apply tomorrow. It's like we're actually teaching you to think, and that's painful.
So I look at that, you're focusing a lot on sustainability and responsible leadership. Now, how do you sort of incorporate these kind of values in your curriculum? And how do you feel that this prepares your students for the business world of the future?
Sure. So I think the second part of that question is the easier one, because I think particularly around sustainability, companies are just expected to have a plan for sustainability, customers expect companies now to actually be much more vocal about their sustainability, but also, what they're doing in the social purpose space. The first half, in terms of how we actually embedding it in our curriculum, that's a little more challenging, although on the sustainability piece, what we've been doing is, or what the Centre for Sustainable Business has been doing is running workshops for our faculty, so that our faculty have been upskilled in what is business sustainability, what are the pieces, and therefore how can they actually embed that in their class a bit more, so that if you are doing operations and supply chain, you're talking about sustainable supply chains and what that actually means, and then maybe you're also talking about modern slavery, so that you've got that social purpose piece to it too, but it is generally the responsibility of our individual faculty to try and weave that into their particular discipline subjects.
I get that. So, while you're sort of focused, every top business school, especially like yours, is focused on innovation in education and also maintaining sort of research excellence, if you will. And sort of what are the kind of initiatives that you are looking to currently undertake or are undertaking that will ensure that you continue to be one of the top ranked institutions in the world?
Sure. So in terms of innovation and education, we do have a learning innovation arm that prods us in the direction of learning innovation, provides assistance. We have learning designers and people who's really staying out there in terms of thinking about more the how we teach than the specifics of what we teach. The specifics of what we teach is still very much faculty driven, but yeah, having a team of within learning innovation is certainly a very helpful way to think about helping how we innovate in terms of education. And then in terms of research, mostly that's about getting how we measure research right, and making sure that we hire the right people so that they continue to do excellent research.
So, what do you think you're doing different than sort of some of the institutions that are out there?
So, one thing is we are Australian based, and it is, it is a bit of a different environment. The links in with industry are, I wouldn't say they're stronger than everybody, but they're very strong. We were set up by, the Melbourne Business School was set up by industry 40 some years ago, so we are only partially owned by University of Melbourne. We are a Melbourne Business School Limited, which means we do have a bit more independence in terms of how we do things, what we teach, and also our ability to work with industry and move a little faster than if we were under traditional Australasian university bureaucracy. But yeah, so I do think it is our links with business that in a sort of Australian context that is one of our things.
That is very interesting. So when you're talking about industry linkages, what are the ways that you sort of work very closely with the industry and with respect to the curriculum and the teaching mechanics?
Sure. So I don't think that piece is that different. So we have executives and residents who will give guest lectures, involve themselves with students. We do live case competitions. So for example, we recently had Jetstar provide a live case that our students have case competitions. Our faculty are involved with consulting. So I think the way, those kind of mechanisms are quite similar across a lot of business schools. It's more the depth of the relationships that are stronger, and it's a bit hard to sort of quantify that, but there really is a sort of almost a love of school and a network that people really value in terms of, oh yeah, you're another MBS alumni.
So do you see a pattern in the kind of students that you're now admitting and has anything changed in the last few years?
So our biggest change is we've introduced an online MBA, and obviously the type of student who does an online MBA is slightly different. The way we've chosen to think about that strategically is our online MBA is identical in terms of admission standards, in terms of tuition cost, and in terms of curriculum to our part-time MBA. So that makes it relatively unique in the Australian market because, some of our competitors have chosen to go with an MBA X, sort of a more express, cheaper option. That's not what the approach we've taken. We've said that, if you choose to do the online degree, it's going to be just as good as the face-to-face. And so that's we've only just rolled that out. It is going to have things like in-person summits where the participants can choose to come to Melbourne and get to know each other in person, but they can also choose not to and do the entire degree online.
Post-COVID, there was this huge influx of online courses. And now, again, I think the top business schools are dialing down, or at least have a hybrid solution, which they're pricing mostly the same. And as you said, they're giving them the option of coming to campus. However, having been through COVID, there must have been some very interesting learnings with respect to learning students' needs. So have you launched any other courses outside of these based on your experiences in COVID?
Only non-award courses, so short courses, executive education type courses. But I will say that hybrid is challenging. So I think we're still working out exactly what we want to do, because when you've got people in the classroom and online, it's often a suboptimal experience for people. It's very challenging for the professor to give an equal experience. So where we're heading towards is more a choice. You're either going to the face-to-face program or you're going to the one that's designed for online. And yes, it has some synchronous sessions, but they're all people online.
Yeah. So in terms of students that you are looking to attract, right? So I'm assuming you're doing extremely well in Australia. So for example, every top business school also tends to attract some of the best students from the rest of the world. So with respect to that, which areas are you looking at, and what are the kinds of students that you feel would make a great fit for MBS?
So it's our full-time daytime program that has the largest of our percentages of international. Our other executive and part-time are mostly an Australian market. But the full-time, like many other schools, we are looking for academically strong students, but also who have the work experience so that those classroom discussions are strong. Many of our students come to us hoping to relocate to Australia, in which case it's very important that they have a work background such that they can actually find a good job once they finish. So, our careers team will actually have a conversation with candidates before they join us, just to give them a bit of a sense of how realistic they're being in terms of an Australian placement after the job, because we don't. It's really important we don't make promises we can't keep, right? So that's one thing we're looking for. I mean, sometimes we have some students who always plan to go back to where they came from, whether that's the US or Europe or India. But for the students who are looking for a relocation as part of their degree, it's really important that that's successful.
So when you're sort of taking these decisions and admitting some of these international students, and let's say, they are looking at relocating to Australia, is the kind of job that they're going to be potentially getting, is that a part of the consideration set for you to make a decision around the student?
The type of job in that it should be MBA level, right? So they need to be applying. Doesn't matter if it's marketing or finance or some other discipline, but it needs to be MBA level, because they've just spent a lot of time on getting this degree. So yes.
Got it. So according to you, you're right. Whenever a student is passing out from your main full-time MBA program, what do you think are the students' biggest takeaways post-degree that go beyond the curriculum, placement, and salaries? What is it that they feel that, as an experience, this was unique to MBS?
So I don't think it's unique to MBS, but we have a very strong sense of cohort. So we have our teams, we call them syndicates. There's a lot of teamwork that they do throughout the curriculum. We teach them how to work in teams, but we also have cohort, broader than the teams. The whole cohort will have events and student clubs, and I think they'll realize the importance of teamwork. I mean, that's sort of curriculum, but business today, if you want to get things done, a lot of it is working in teams, and I think we set them up fairly well in that regard.
And so, while you're a top business school in Australia, do you have plans to get into other countries and scale?
We always talk about such things. We do have an executive education arm in Malaysia. So we do actually have some personnel on the ground in Malaysia doing executive education, mostly for custom clients, customer executive education. I think going offshore would need to be as part of a partnership. And so, we have a few conversations ongoing, but nothing that's concrete at this point.
Okay. I remember reading that you have a recent partnership with ISB, which is about the immersion part of your MBA exec education program. So are there any other similar collaborations that you are looking at with respect to Indian business schools?
So we do already have exchange programs. So part of our MBA, we have quite a generous exchange program that we have quite a lot of partners around the world. So we actually have 3 exchange partnerships. So that's, an individual student going off and studying for a semester, for a term elsewhere. So not just ISB, we also have 2 of the IIMs in our exchange. So our students can go there, and students from there can come to us for a term to study. But yes, the ISB, which is an immersion, the students will actually go there for a week and study from people from faculty from ISB. This is a new thing for us, so let's get our feet under that one before we think of any more.
Okay, so finally, as we sort of close to wrapping this up, what kind of advice that you would give to any MBA aspirant who's looking to apply for an MBA program at MBS in this coming admission cycle?
Start your application early, so get it in. So we actually have multiple rounds in rolling admissions, so getting in early is a good idea. And then, of course, take the written statements that are part of the application seriously, because we do look at them carefully. So just do a good job with your application.
Professor, is there any question that you wish I had asked and you would like to answer?
No, I think you did a pretty good job of covering off a lot of good topics.
So in which case, thank you so very much, Professor Olsen, for your time. Thank you for being on time. We really appreciate it. Bye. Bye.